Welcome back to another episode of Champions of Resilience, the podcast where we explore the real stories behind rising, rebuilding, and thriving. Each week, we dive into the journeys of people who've weathered storms, reinvented themselves, and discovered the courage to keep going. If you're someone who's ever felt like an underdog, a wanderer, or someone trying to carve out your place in the world, this space is for you. This is where we celebrate the grit, the heart, and the everyday resilience that keeps us going one brave step at a time. Today's guest is someone whose story I absolutely love because it's raw, it's real, and it's full of that wanderer spirit that teaches us resilience doesn't always follow a straight line. Matt Welsh, known throughout West Virginia as the Vagabond Chef, is a culinary artist, an adventurer, a storyteller, and the founder of the Vagabond Kitchen in Wheeling, West Virginia. Matt didn't take a traditional path into cooking. Instead, he traveled the country on a motorcycle, visiting restaurants, meeting the chefs, tasting regional food, and gathering wisdom from the open road. That journey, that curiosity, ultimately brought him back home, where he created a kitchen rooted in Appalachian heritage, local sourcing, and soul deep storytelling. Matt's food has heart, but even more than that, his journey has heart. And today we get to explore both. Matt, welcome to Champions of Resilience. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. You make me sound awesome.
You are awesome, and I forgot there was so much about you that you're just an incredible human being, first of all,
Oh, thank you. I
which is why
appreciate that.
I adore you and adore your story. And certainly all the things that you've done in the community and throughout the state of West Virginia now. But I didn't mention you had a recent article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which I thought was fabulous. So congratulations on that too.
Yeah, thank you. That was so cool. I do a lot of different things to support West Virginia and like my mission for quality food. But one of those things has been being a brand ambassador for the Appalachian Cellar, which is a brand of West Virginia made shelf stable products. And it's gotten a great response. I got to cook on Pittsburgh Today Live as to support them. And the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article that just came out, I did demos with WDTV out of Bridgeport. So it's been a really great way to get out there and just to be able to preach the message a little bit more about what's going on.
I just love it. I love it that you're proud of your heritage. And so I want to start with a question that kind of piqued my curiosity. So the whole idea, the name Vagabond Chef, it's really unforgettable. Where did that identity begin for you?
That's a great story. By the time I graduated high school, like I wanted to get out and go explore. I grew up reading about the frontiersmen and explorers of the world, and I just really wanted to see the world. I wanted to get out there. And that's what I did for about 20 years. And it was after a visit with a 4-H friend in California. She had relocated. After I visited her, she was talking to her grandma back here in West Virginia, and her grandma said, "What does your friend Matt do?" And my friend was like, well, he works for a while, he saves up his money, and then when he has enough, he thinks he has enough money, he travels until he runs out of money, and then he gets another job. And grandma said, "Oh, he's a vagabond." And I just thought it was so cool. This was 10, 15 years ago, and I just thought it was so cool. Like she could have thought all kinds of like negative or pejorative things, but no, she thought it was a really cool thing. So I held on to that. I like Germanic words too. I like the gutturalness of them, the way they feel in your mouth. And then years later, I was leaving my position as the sous chef at a cross-country ski lodge in the center of Idaho in the Sawtooth Mountains. And I wanted to do this culinary travel blog, ride my motorcycle across the country and research food. And I was talking to the guy I consider a motorcycle mentor. He's a fellow from Pittsburgh. We met when we both lived in Chicago, and he now lives out in near Seattle somewhere. And I was talking to him, and he's this gruff kind of hardcore guy. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. And he's, oh, you're going to be like the Vagabond Chef. And I was like, that's it. He actually designed the logo that we use for Vagabond Kitchen today. So we get a little full circle.
That is awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So that is the pull to go out and explore on your motorcycle. Like that was about discovery, that was about finding your identity. Tell me more about that.
I grew up watching Northern Exposure on TV. I love that show. I also, before that, I was reading a lot of Jack London when I was a kid, and Hatchet by Gary Paulson was a big book for me when I was a kid. So Northern Exposure really appealed to me. My whole family used to sit around and watch it. And of course, we had John Corbett playing the DJ Chris in the show. And Chris, the character, was also from Wheeling. And Chris rode his motorcycle to Alaska. And I just thought that was the coolest thing I ever heard. When I was a kid, my dad had a motorcycle. He used to strap a Schwinn bicycle seat to the sissy bar of his Kawasaki, something that would not be approved of these days. But I grew up with those stories. And I really was attracted to that character on that show because he was introspective. He was a thinker. He was an artist. It was a new paradigm for what a man could be. And it really appealed to me. I also came into Dead Poets Society around that time in my life, which was, really had a huge mark on me. So I always wanted to ride my motorcycle. And it was years and years that I talked about this. I was super into it. I didn't do anything. And I don't know if if I'm allowed to cuss in this. I cuss a lot.
Just be yourself. That's all.
Okay. So sorry, folks. If you have little kids listening, or if you're at work, you might want to mute. So anyway, eventually I was like, man, I got to shit or get off the pot. Like, I can't keep talking about riding a motorcycle without riding it. So when I was in Idaho, I took a beginner's course. I got a dirt bike. I started riding the logging trails around the lodge where I worked. And I was like, I'm home. This is something I need to do. And one of the reasons I started Vagabond Chef was because I had spent 30 some years not riding a motorcycle. Now I really needed to make up for lost time. So 13,000 miles in the saddle in 1 year helped me do that.
I guess. Wow, what an experience. So when you think about that 13,000 miles, it's like you're driving for life lessons, for discovery, for what did that teach you about food and about people?
Anytime I've traveled, I've learned that we are way more alike than we are different. I've really connected with folks all over the world in tons of different scenarios. I've probably put myself into some dangerous positions, but I've never really felt that danger. Now, granted, I am a large white man, and I recognize that. But I've always had the best interactions. And riding on a motorcycle, motorcycle riders call cars cages. And like it really feels that way. Where when you're on the back of a bike, you're free. There's a couple inches between you and the asphalt. You're out there in the wind. There's bugs in your hair, your beard. You gotta act like everyone out there is trying to kill you because a lot of them are without meaning to. So it's raw, it's real. But I also think because it is that way, and because there's a mystique around motorcycles, it encourages people to reach out and to ask questions. And I am actually more of an introverted person, and I tend to keep to myself if I'm given my druthers. But I told myself before I went on this trip, I was like, man, you gotta be comfortable talking to people. You gotta hand out stickers. You gotta tell them what you're doing. So I treated it like I need to make sure I'm telling people what I'm doing and why. So I got to have a lot more really interesting and informing conversations because I was making myself vulnerable, and they were encouraged to be vulnerable because of my situation.
I love that. I love the whole idea. It's almost as if when you're vulnerable, you give other people permission to be
Yeah,
vulnerable. And then
absolutely.
it's really in that where we find our connection, is that that's where we deeply connect with other people.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And if we got our walls up or our blinders on, that's not going to happen. And then you're insulated, which insulation can be a good thing, but it can also not help you grow.
So that's curious to me. Like you're out on this road, you're normally an introvert, and then you're shifting into extrovert mode. What was it that you learned about yourself? What did you find that surprised you?
That's a great question. It was a massive undertaking to ride your motorcycle across the entire country is huge. There's a lot of discomfort, but I'd cultivated an acceptance of discomfort. I was a wilderness instructor for a couple years after college, and I took adjudicated troubled kids out into the woods for a month at a time. So no showers, living in a tent, all through through the season. So in the winter we were out there too. So I got comfortable being uncomfortable. And there was a lot of that. And another thing that I definitely lived throughout this trip that I had learned through my travels previously was just when you step out of your context, you learn about the places you go, but you free yourself from some characteristics that are a cage. And you learn more about where your edges are and about what really drives you instead of just being stuck in a rut.
I love that. I love that. So you're out there, and how many years were you on the road?
Off and on for 20 years. After I 18, I left. I went to Pittsburgh and I traveled a lot for mostly 2 decades. And then right around that time is when I came back home for good.
And that's my next question. What brought you back to West Virginia? You explored, you've done a lot of things, and there's a lot of stereotypes that West Virginia has. And now you're this worldly guy, because I also read where you traveled internationally too.
Mhm.
So, what was the draw back to West Virginia?
At the time, the inciting incident was just a position. I had relocated after my trip to Arizona, and I was having a hard time breaking into the Tucson job market. And there was an opportunity back here, and I leapt at it. But I think what really brought me home was the people. And I saw that in my travels throughout my life, but especially on the motorcycle. The closer I got to Appalachia, the smoother connections were. And there's just something special about people that grew up around here. They're different, and I do think we can connect all across the world, and despite our demographics, we can find common ground. But there's just something special about these hills.
Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think people have a lot of misperceptions about West Virginia and particularly the people. And so I'm so glad you're shining this big, bright light on the goodness of the people. And certainly the whole idea of your restaurant fascinates me. I love the title, but I'm just curious, when you think about cooking and creating meals and things, what does what does that feel for your identity? How do you relate to that?
When I was a wilderness instructor, I was 2 years, 365 days in the field over the course of 2 years. So fully half of my time was in the woods. And I grew up in the woods. I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up crawling through the woods around that farm. But I went through a process that I've decided to call calibrating my gut when I was a wilderness instructor. And it's a lot the same way when I cook. People say you listen to your ancestors. You listen, okay, grandma, how much salt do I add here? And or your palate. I develop my palate. That's another way of saying I think basically the same thing. So I look for inspiration, and a lot of my inspiration for the Vagabond Kitchen has come from regional Appalachian dishes. But then I put that through a creative filter of what I've seen, what I've done, what I think tastes good. I try to take things and turn them, just give them a little click of make them a little more interesting, a little bit more engaging. I want people to be able to recognize a dish so it's not too intimidating, but also to give them something that they've never had before. And I'm really looking for that oh moment. And it's great. Like I remember specifically with cooking when I was in Idaho, messing up, and I almost could feel like a schedule, like every couple of weeks. Oh crap, I better be careful. I'm about due to mess up again. And then that time period started to stretch out. And then all of a sudden there got to be a time where like I just wasn't messing up anymore. And I knew how to fix mistakes if they happened. And I got to like really live in that process. And that was really cool. So a lot of it is instinctual, the cooking. And now that I own a restaurant, a lot of times I don't do the hands-on cooking. I'm writing the recipes and the menus. And so I've had to be able to take it even a step more removed from the physicality of it and be able to write a menu knowing what goes together well, what's going to be executable in the kitchen, and then write recipes based off of that and what I want people to experience so that someone else can do that work.
Just curious that you built this restaurant from the ground up, and I'm just wondering what were some of your like tougher moments? It sounds to me like when you're describing finding the right palette and thinking about how much your grandma might put in. That seems spiritual to me. So I'm just curious, did you tap into that intuition and your spiritual strength as you were building the restaurant? And what was maybe the couple of the toughest moments?
Oh boy, it was a series of tough moments, and not that it's not still. Honestly, the first and hardest thing was actually charging people. It was so hard to ask people to pay. I just wanted to feed people. I just wanted people to be happy. And actually getting paid for that was really hard. And then doing the sort of food that I want to do is sourcing local, sourcing high quality ingredients. That's expensive. So then you're getting the negative feedback. That's too expensive. I think people wanted and expected me to be like a diner. And that's not the food that I do. That's not, and just folks didn't understand the concept of a chef-driven restaurant and what that could be and what that meant. So that was hard. And it's a small town. So plenty of naysayers over the years, some with valid points, some not. And to be able to hear that criticism and look at it and say, is that true? What is the source? Can I learn anything from that? I knew that intellectually, but emotionally, that was often really difficult.
Mhm. I think that is one of the most difficult things is when you put yourself out there like you have, and whenever you do that, you open yourself up to criticism and critique. And sometimes it's beneficial and sometimes it's just critique. I love it that you persevered. And then, you just strike me as this super authentic
Thank you.
man. And I'm just curious, how have you been able to stay true to yourself when being authentic wasn't really cool? Now it's cool to be authentic, right? But it wasn't cool. So how did you stay true to yourself?
I don't know that I can answer that, Amy, because it's always been important to me. Discovering who I am is always something that's been important to me. I was really fortunate at a young age to read the Transcendentalists, and then I got into the existentialists. So I'm like in high school reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and then I started reading Sartre and Camus, and and a lot of Jack Kerouac, which is probably no surprise. But I was inspired to live this authentic life, to seek to die a happy death. And the only way to do that is to live a good life. So I didn't want any regrets. And I've made plenty of mistakes. I've fucked up tons of shit. But to not let those mistakes hold me down, even though sometimes other people want to bring those up to hold you down. I remember writing in my journal at years and years ago, when people try to put you in your place, they're trying to put you in their place for you. And I won't have that.
I love that. I love a guy who journals. Like, this is amazing.
Journals, writes poetry.
You've just given me another reason to just want to give you a big hug and love you.
Next time we see each other, I'll pick you up on that.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm thinking you've got so much wisdom and so many life experiences already, and you're a young man, really. If you were talking to someone out there who's struggling, who's feeling a little lost, or they're searching for a purpose, what kind of advice would you give them?
It's all about purpose. That was the big thing about my wandering years. Was it was awesome. I saw a lot of really cool stuff. I did a lot of cool journal entries and probably have some cool pictures laying around, but I wasn't fulfilled because I didn't have a purpose. I was just this figure walking the landscape. And something about my life for the past 12 years is it's been really hard, but I'm super fulfilled because I'm working towards something much bigger than myself. Like, choose your illusion. Because as existentialists say that we determine our existence, why we're here. So pick one. It can change later. It doesn't have to stick with you forever, but pick a reason to be on this planet and start living that reason. And I think be kind to yourself. We're all going to have bad days. We're all going to not be at 100% all the time. And you've got to be able to draw a line with yourself where you're like, okay, I'm having a bad day. I'm in my feels today. I need to feel these feels. So I'm going to have a bad day. Tomorrow, I'm going to pick myself up and get back to work.
I love that. That's incredible. It's really great, great advice. When you think about resilience and you think about everything that you've been through and the tough seasons that you've weathered or may still be weathering, what does resilience mean to you? What does that look like?
It looks like it was, I think, one of the first trailers for the Miss Marvel movie with Carol Danvers. Brie Larson was in that movie. And the first trailer is you see her getting knocked down over and over and over again, but she gets up one more time and she gets knocked down. And that's what it's all about.
So true. So what's next for the Vagabond Kitchen?
Oh boy, we have so many things on the horizon, both for me and for the restaurant. I'm hoping now that the streetscape project is almost done in Wheeling, which is a multi-million dollar street resurfacing project, that we can finally get people coming back downtown. I have big dreams for what we could do with downtown, and I hope to be a part of that as we move forward. Personally, I'm actually in school right now to become a business coach, and I'm really digging on that and really enjoying that. My work with state parks also keeps me very busy, but these days it's all about my family and what I can do, how I can be the best dad to my sons, how I can be the best husband for my wife. And doing my parents set me up so much better than they ever had, and I just want to be able to do that for my kids.
That's amazing. Matt, I want to thank you for sharing your story with us today. The highs, the risks, the wanderings, and the homecomings. Your journey reminds us that sometimes resilience looks like leaving, and sometimes it looks like returning. Sometimes it's found in the miles we travel, and sometimes it's found in the soil we call home. To our listeners, whatever road you're on, trust that it's shaping you. Trust that the wandering has purpose. Trust that the return, whatever home means for you, will make sense when it's meant to. This is Champions of Resilience. I'm your host, Amy Gamble. Keep rising, rebuilding, and thriving, one brave step at a time. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.